everybody, and welcome to the second episode of Toy Talk Show. A 7-month gap in between episodes, but we'll get there. We'll get a whole season out here. My guest this week, if you're not familiar with him through the channel, then I kind of envy you because you have a lot of homework to do and it'll be fun, is, he's got a lot of credits. First of all, my introduction to him was the website, the Gallery of Monster Toys, which was an oasis of information in a desert. He directed the shot for video film In Love with Toys, which I have seen dozens of times, and he has it on his YouTube channel. Currently, he is the host of several series on his YouTube channel, including Basement of Horror and Tomb of the Topstones. And to top it off, he's not only been in a Coffin Joe movie, he's freaking played Coffin Joe. I introduce Raymond J. Castile. How you doing, man?
Where's the J stand?
Is it I don't know.
Anyway, it's Raymond Sharif Castile.
Oh my goodness, why did I say J?
Because you're
thinking... Oh, you know what? You know why? Because I have a friend named Rockford J. Pugglesworth, and I think I just went right into J. I apologize. Yeah, of course it's. I knew your middle name, because you use it on Facebook.
Yes. No, J. It's like you were talking about Coffin Joe, so it's Raymond Joe. I've had people call me Joe.
Oh yeah, maybe that's it. Maybe Coffin Joe. Yeah. That's funny how that works. I get called Brad a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'd known for a few years. I thought surely he knows my name. He was just talking to me one day, and he says Joe. He wasn't making like a reference. He really thought my name was Joe, and I thought I didn't say anything. I thought, okay, he's known me 2-3 years. He thinks my name is Joe. Okay, whatever. I'll take it.
I know I've known someone 20 years. He calls me Brad. And I recently joked about it on Facebook, and I don't think we're friends on Facebook, but somebody in his friend circle saw it and sent me a video of him going, "Hey, Brad." But I think it's funny.
Brain for a while because you were spelling it brain online.
Yeah, well, I've done that ever since I was a kid, because I would get it. I would get it on certificates. I would get it on Chinese food. And I have a really good friend named Brian as well. And the first time we ever met, he said, "Don't you hate it when they spell your name Brain?" And then we just started calling each other Brain. We started a video store or a video company called Strange Brains, which didn't go anywhere. And it was just one of those things. And now I just sign it like that because I think it's funny,
So consistent about it. Like we were talking like a dozen years ago. I was maybe longer than that. I was thinking your name was Brain, but I caught on eventually. Okay.
Now, we have like I've been watching your show, and every once in a while you'll say something, and I'll just be like, "Oh, damn, we got a lot in common." And forgive me if I've misread this, but you are a high school collector as well.
Well, that might be making more of it than it really was. In high school, my collecting interest, I think, started in high school because I saw things like the old Lantern Family pumpkins. Are you familiar with
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
The Boglins and some of those mid-'80s toys. And I started to buy those just for my amusement because they interested me. But I wasn't really thinking of collecting. It wasn't until I was in college. It was really 1989, the summer that Batman came out. Everyone was talking. The pop culture stuff was in the air.
Yeah. And you're not the only person to tell me that was like a magical year of finding out this stuff. That's interesting.
Right. So yes, I bought a few things. I bought Boglins, bought Lantern Family pumpkins. I bought a little bit of the Kenner RoboCop stuff just because I like RoboCop. But I wasn't.
Yeah, me too.
Collecting. I was just thinking I like these things, so why not buy them? Just because I'm older doesn't mean I can't buy them if I want them. So why not buy them? But I wasn't like I am a collector now. It wasn't until that summer of '89 that I I started officially collecting, and the first thing I started collecting was Doctor Who. That was my entryway into being a collector.
Was that the Dapol figures?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that was really cool.
I wanted the Denise Fisher figures, and I wanted that.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Out of my reach at the time, so I started with
That was actually the Denny Fisher figures were the first thing I got obsessive about when I got into that zone of dual income, no kids. In the my late 20s. But yeah, I remember opening the Dapol package I got from Toy Shop the night of my prom, and being like, "Oh, cool!" Getting a Sylvester McCoy figure. That's really interesting.
Well, I could almost, if you wanted me to tell a story, I can.
Yeah.
The day I started collecting, I was visiting both my grandparents were still alive. I was visiting my grandparents. They lived in Collinsville, Illinois. I'm in the St. Louis area in Missouri, so they're not too far away. I was visiting them for a few days, and this was I was in college at the time, so I was out of high school, but still in school in college. And I went to this comic book store just because it was like a fun local place to go, and I saw these Doctor Who toys. I think that was the first time I'd ever seen them, and I was really intrigued. And they had the big plates, and it was like $8, or it was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And the owner noticed that I was taking an interest in the toys, and he said, "Oh, do you collect toys?" And I didn't really know what that meant. And I said, "No, I'm just I like Doctor Who, and I was interested in this. I mean, I have a few toys at home." And he said, "Well, come here, I want to show you something." Now, today, that sounds sinister. Like, you take me in the back. Come here, young man.
No.
But I followed him into this back room. And in this back room, it was about as big as the basement I'm looking at here. It was a big room. It wasn't a little closet. It was a big, big storage area. He had a whole wall of carded Star Wars figures, like all films. I mean, today, I bet there was like $250,000 worth of toys on that wall. At the time, no, it wasn't worth that. Yeah. But they had just all these peg hooks filled with original carded Star Wars figures. And then he had a Mego shelf that had boxed Mego superheroes, which I had not seen since I was a kid. I was amazed. And he had G.I. Joe and this, you name it. He had this full-blown mint and package collection. And I was awestruck because I didn't think any of this stuff still existed. Because I didn't have a concept of saving things in a package. I thought you buy a toy, you play with it, you use it up, and either you save it because it's a personal thing, or you put it in a garage sale and you get rid of it. Keeping it pristine and keeping the package, I didn't know anything about that. So I was like, my eyes were this big. I just thought, this almost seems like a prank or something. Well, why is it still in the package? What's going on here? And he explained, well, I collect. And he told me the whole thing, like, I collect all these. I buy them in the package. I go out and look at them. I said, well, where do you find this stuff? Oh, you find it. Go to toy shows. You go to a Toy Shop magazine. You know dealers. And he gave me this crash course in toy collecting. I was there a couple of hours, and he just basically taught me everything he knew about toy collecting. In that, it was like a little master class. As I stood there, and then by the time I left that room, I had a checklist of the Megos I wanted to buy.
So he brainwashed you good.
And I remember, because my brother really likes Captain America, so I was holding a boxed Captain America, and I was saying, "Oh, my brother would really like that. How much is this?" I think he was like a couple of $100. Even Megos back then, you could get box ones for like $15, but not from this guy. There
was a lot of guys like that, where if you waited, you get it for $20, but this guy wanted $100. I remember that.
So he was telling me, "Oh, you'll never find that. That's too ambitious. You're not going to find a Captain America." So that was one of the first ones I bought, just because he told me I couldn't find one.
Yeah, I've done that too.
But that day, when I left his room, I looked at the Dapol playset, which seemed too expensive a couple hours ago. But now I thought, I'm going to buy this. So I bought I never spent any money like this on toys before in my life. $80 or more on that playset. And then I bought like a Dalek and a couple other those figures. And I put them on top of there, paid for it. And I walked 2-3 miles to my grandparents' house with this playset and these figures on top with cards.
I've done that as well. Many times.
Back in there, they said, why did you buy this? Like, is this like some kid's birthday or something? But
yeah, right.
And then to another but within 6 months, I had carded Lincoln monsters and carded Azrak monsters and boxed Mego superheroes, and I went crazy. I was like whole hog, all in.
Yeah,
full tilt.
I'm actually really envious of that, because Lincoln Monsters is something we also have in common in that we both had them as kids, and they were our de facto monster figures. You did have some AHI, I know that, but the Lincolns were all I had, and I got confused. I remember in the 80s showing up to a show at the Masonic Temple looking for my Frankenstein. I bought a Mego Frankenstein from Third Planet, and it was like, this isn't a Mego Frankenstein. And then I bought an AHI, or I saw an AHI one at the Masonic Temple, and I thought, no, this is the wrong one. You know, even though I liked it better. But yeah, Lincoln Monsters were tough to find.
I got my first one from Bob Monko, and you know who that is.
I loved Bob, yeah. Yeah, I was going to bring him up. I'm glad you did. He's a legend of finding toys, especially in your area, right? Like, he's a St. Louis guy, or he was.
Right now, yeah.
Yeah.
So if that shop owner was like Masterclass Part 1, a couple of months later, I had Masterclass Part 2 with Bob Monko at his house, and the same experience, seeing all the stuff at his house, and he had bin package everything. He had second series color forms outer space, not the reissue things from like the real ones.
Yeah.
And he had stuff like in his kitchen sink and his kitchen counter. He had stuff on the floor, just everywhere. You had to be careful not to step on, and it wasn't a bunch of junk. It was all grails. It was all rare, amazing.
He was like, I couldn't get over some of the stuff he had.
And he did the same thing that the shop owner did. He taught me in like a couple of hours about all this stuff. And I left his house with carded Lincoln Frankenstein, carded Lincoln Dracula, boxed Mego Iron Man, carded Mego Batgirl, and one or two other things. I can't, none of that. I left his house with that stuff.
How much do you remember that costing?
The Lincolns were really expensive. They were like $90 each.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And the Iron Man was about the same. It was all like 100, a little less than 100 each, 75 to 100 each. So I spent $400 or $500, which was a lot of money.
It's an insane amount of money. And yeah, I remember those days. I remember a guy called me up, and he was, I think he was in Kansas City. Mark Wallace was his name. And he goes, I got a set of Lincoln Monsters. He wanted 150 a piece. And I had just figured out they were Lincoln Monsters because I had ordered a 1976 Monkey Ward's catalog, and finally saw that spread and went, those are my monsters. And so I couldn't swing that kind of money. So I picked one, and I picked the Phantom. Because the Phantom was just so, I don't know, he's probably my favorite Lincoln other than Frankenstein. But the card was like this, like a concave, because I think it was like a pennies mailer or sorry, a Ward's mailer, where they would just shove the card in. So it was kind of like a toughie, but man, they were not easy to find.
Yeah, I think most of my card Lincolns have something like that, where it looks like the card bent at some point. I think survived. All of mine are US. I don't have any UK Lincolns.
I think I'm a mix. I didn't at the time when that big find happened. I ended up helping that person sell them. She wrote me and said, can I help? And I kind of, but I never really bought a lot of them because I didn't have the money. I just had a second kid, and over the years, I lucked out and picked up. Like I'm content with Lincolns. There's no yearning. I would love to have a card of Mr. Rock, but so would 250 other people, and that gets expensive. Speaking of that,
Rock at all.
what's that? Yeah, I know. Yeah. Speaking of that, like what's your collecting style these days? Meaning, I think we're both well past the have it all. And I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I'm like, I've seen this character 20 times now, as an action figure that I would buy. So it's starting to get a little like you get picky, not cynical, but.
Well, I'm a little blasé, I guess. Let's see. I don't want to rain on anyone else's parade. But, I mean, a lot of the new stuff that's coming out, we'll stop looking at new stuff. A lot of the new stuff, I recognize it's really cool that it's out there, but I don't have very much of it. Because a lot of reasons. First of all, kind of what you're saying, just how many times can you buy a Frankenstein figure? Or how many boxes full of the same characters can you have in your house? Or how many, if you just, I don't really display my toys, but how many can you have on a shelf? Some people, there is no limit. They have a whole case of just Frankenstein, right? Just like each character has its own case.
Yeah.
Not like that. But also money. I think we're both Gen X, right? So yeah. We're both getting to an age where I'm thinking about how many years do I have left where I'm going to be able to work. I mean, I'd like to keep working, but it might get to the point where the people just don't want me. So how many income earning years do I have left? And who's going to want this stuff in 15, 20 years? And I'm going to be in a situation where I'm on a fixed income and I can't pay the property taxes, but I've got a house full of junk nobody wants. How much more stockpiling should I be doing at this point?
Yeah.
And I'm already thinking of, I guess, the grave.
Yeah. Well, go figure. But I mean, yeah, I understand exactly that. It's like, how much more do I need? Like, I was at a flea market on the weekend, and there was an amazing deal on a G.I. Joe box set. Canadian box. It ticked all the boxes, and my wife said, "Why don't you buy it?" And I was like, I just think I think I've kind of like passed the limit of big G.I. Joe purchases in my life, especially ones that take up a lot of space. And it's like, nah, I'm good. It's just awesome. And yeah, it's you got to pick your battles these days for sure.
When someone says, like, what's your grail, what's your want list, I don't really have one anymore. And part of it is because I've got a lot of stuff, but also because my priorities have changed, and I just can't see spending $1,000 or thousands of dollars on a toy. It just doesn't emotionally make sense anymore. It did some years ago. It doesn't make sense now. It's not where I'm at psychologically or my place in life. Like, for instance, you probably saw there was an Incredible Melting Man makeup kit on eBay a couple weeks ago.
Oh no, I didn't catch that. All right, that's a shame. I would love to have talked about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, no one bought it because it was $2,600. Yeah. And I know
that's a lot for what is basically just a plastic tray with makeup in it.
I mean, there was a time in my life where I might have pulled the trigger on that, even though it's not a good price. I don't think that's what that should be. I mean, something's only worth what someone's willing to pay for it. So if you get that, okay, but he obviously didn't get it. I'm not saying that's what it should be or it's a good price, but I could imagine Raymond 15, 20 years ago, if he could have done that, or maybe just taken a credit card and said, "Well, this is my chance to get this," and spent the money. But now I let it slide. Even though that is one of my holy grails. If you say, like, what's your 10 holy grails? That's one of them. I really want that item, but just not enough to pay that kind of money. It's not that I think I'm going to get a better deal someday. It's so rare. I don't know. I'll probably never get one. But even so, I'm just not. It doesn't make financial sense to. It's not where I should put my resources. I mean, how is my life going to be different? Because that.
Yeah, you know how your life will be different is in the 7 days it takes for it to get there. You'll have 7 really good days because you're like all excited about the new thing, and then when it gets there, you won't be disappointed. But yeah, life goes on. I absolutely know that, like, postpartum vibe to stuff.
I want to pay off debt, not increase it. I want to be more fiscally responsible. I haven't paid off the car I'm driving now. I still owe money on that. That's where I should be putting. Okay, it sounds very boring growing up. That's where, if I was going to put money like that, or something experiential like a trip.
Yeah.
Or I do sometimes spend money on musical instruments. But again, I feel like that's enriching. That's experiential.
Oh, yeah, like musical instruments especially are just so they pay for themselves in your time and your, like I consider music meditation. And I'm not a musician. My wife is a musician, but I just see the value in that so much. You are a very good musician from everything I've seen. You're a well. Is it synthesizer? Is that your
keyboardist, synthesizer player? Yeah.
And
I so most of my synthesizers cost some much than that Melting Man, but I feel like that's a life experience instead of an object.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a different thing.
It's like buying a bicycle. If you get on that bicycle, it's worth its weight in gold. Otherwise it's just getting dust. But if you're getting something out of it, that's I understand that is a different kind of expenditure.
My family's. I'm Egyptian, but I haven't seen my family in Egypt for 20 years. So, because just really money.
Yeah.
So if I were going to spend a bunch of money, that would be one area would be a trip to Egypt. Some of the older ones have died. It'd be nice to connect with the younger ones again. So that's where I feel like if I'm going to spend thousands of dollars, not that I have it laying around to spend, but if I were going to spend that, it should be something like that, not this object.
How are you though? Like, this is a problem I face. Is you go to a shop, you're not even trying to buy something, and it. Like some things tickle your fancy sometimes, and the impulse control takes over. Are you bad with that? I'm pretty good with it, but I've occasionally bitten.
Well, I'm pretty good with that. I think because my interests are so niche, they're so narrow, so specific that maybe takes a lot to tickle me.
Right.
Like if I go to a toy show, I'm coughing so much, I'm clearing my throat. If I go to a toy show,
we should clarify that Ray just got over something, and it's particularly nasty.
You gave it to me over the computer, I think.
Over the interwebs, I had it, and just through instant messenger. It's that bad.
Yeah, that's how you're all these. Not roulette, whatever. Okay, so if I go to a toy show, I'm not going to see like that Melting Man kit. I'm not going to see, Topstone Masks that I don't have. I'm not going to see packaged Azrak Hamway or Lincoln or Tomland I'm not going to see, unless our mutual friend Andy is set up at the show. We're not going to see that stuff.
Yeah, right.
So I'm not going to buy Joe figure. I'm not going to buy a turtle. So, no, at that show, I don't really experience that. I don't go to a lot of toy shows very much anymore. At the store, I go to Target, I'll look at the NECA figures, and sometimes I do like to buy those in person. I don't. It's like a last resort if I have to order it. I really like to, if I'm going to buy one, buy it in person, make sure the box is nice and open it.
I get that.
But sometimes I'll buy a NECA figure. Not much else. So I guess my impulse control, I think just by virtue of my interest being so narrow these days, it's pretty good. I don't pick up a lot of, I don't have that experience very often of finding something in the wild saying, oh, wow, look at this. I wish I did. I used to, but.
I don't have it very often either, because I don't really buy a lot of modern stuff other than like some Mego and some Super 7 occasionally. But I have a friend in the UK that I constantly trade toys with. And there is something about, like, I love going to stores and shopping for him. I don't know what it
is. The bag knockoffs?
Yeah. We trade toys, and he collects different like superpowers and that sort of stuff. And I do kind of like the hunting for it and buying it and then sending it away. Because I don't know what it is about it, but there's some sort of like proxy trigger in my brain, like endorphins come out because I found the Green Arrow,
Yeah, I mean, I used to have that, but I just, these days, I go to a store and it's just like, I kind of, there's not really a lot of surprise because I know it's coming out. It's Megos or NECA or Super 7 or Hasbro. I know what's out there. So the only surprise might be if I didn't know something was already out. Like maybe I thought it was months to come, but there it is on the shelf. But there's not a lot of surprise, and I don't go to a lot of vintage stores because there aren't any. Not like there used to.
That's too bad. Yeah.
Maybe in your area, but if there were good vintage stores that had toys, I mean, there's antique shops, stuff with good toys, then I might have that experience of like going to a vintage toy store or an antique mall that had a lot of toys in it and saying, wow, this. And I certainly see posts on Facebook of other people antique malls or someplace and finding things and thinking, wow, I never seen anything like that. But maybe it's because I don't really look for that stuff. Maybe if I look for it, I can find it.
Yeah, like my wife is a avid antiquer, and she loves road trips, and we drive all over our region, which is like the most populous part of Canada. So we do have we have lots of land, and we have lots of antique malls and that sort of stuff. So we do that. Like we just got back from a 4-day trip doing that, and for me, it's meditative, even when I don't find anything, which is often because I'm picky, and also like I do kind of just get off into niches and tangents, and like I've walked into antique malls going, I'll buy anything with David Carradine Kung Fu, and I won't find anything because that's impossible. And but we really just dig the hunt, I guess, more than the find. Sometimes it's just the day we have the adventure.
Yeah, I think maybe my region is kind of picked over.
It could be.
Yeah, that could be it. But I think if I went traveling long distance and got out of the immediate area, I probably would have some adventures like that where I might find some interesting things. I think it also goes down to money that my purchases are so calculated that I don't just I got a couple $100 just spend on something. It's more I want a particular thing, and so I go after that particular thing.
Yeah, hyper focus.
Yeah.
I did that with lines for a long time, and it really works. I mean, you do go through, the tumbleweeds 3, 4, 5 months of not finding something, but when that when that pays off, you feel pretty darn good about it.
As far as like eBay is concerned, I look for anything to do with Topstone.
Mm-hmm.
Not a lot comes up anymore. I haven't had a really good Topstone find on eBay in a long time. Again, I think that's sort of picked over on a international level. I think that field has become picked over. I think those finds are going to be fewer and farther between now.
Now we're talking about Topstone Masks, and I got to ask you, like, do they not? Are they dying like the original Topstone Masks? Are like, how do you preserve that? It wasn't meant to be preserved.
I don't know if any people watching know what a Topstone is.
Well, you have one right behind you.
Oh, well, that's not an actual
Yeah,
that's
no, but what I mean is a design.
character.
Yeah.
That's the shock monster. So let me talk Topstone. That Topstone was a mask company, like rubber Halloween masks, that started in 1946 and continued through the early 90s, and then it was sold off. And during that history, and now there's a new company that's going to reboot Topstone. I don't know how much of that I should talk about, but you'll be seeing.
But good things are coming if you like Topstone.
Yeah, I think if you like Topstone, look out. In the next year or two, stuff is on the way. But the original Topstone was around from the 40s to the early 90s, and they made rubber Halloween masks and other Halloween novelties and decorations and all kinds of stuff. Everything to do with Halloween. Later, they branched out into Easter, but they kept it like holiday novelty stuff. And there's a cult around the, not like druids, but there's like a collector popularity around the rubber, particularly the rubber Halloween masks made by Topstone. Other products too, but those are the central focus.
Chairman of the board.
Yeah, and it was run by an artist named Keith Ward, who was a famous illustrator. He illustrated the Black Stallion and all kinds of famous books.
Wow.
And he ran the company, and he designed all the masks, and he designed these iconic characters, like this one's the Shock Monster. Its original name was Horror, and then it was Horror Zombie, and then one of the retail distributors called it Shock Monster, and that stuck. That's a very iconic image of Halloween and monsters in general. But there's every character Topstone made was iconic. And if you read Famous Monsters of Filmland magazine, you saw masks advertised in that magazine, particularly from the late 50s through the 60s. You saw Topstone masks advertised for sale in that magazine, and they advertised in comic books. If you opened a comic book and you saw an ad like a werewolf, or a caveman mask.
Yeah, the lady vampire is like burned into my brain.
Yeah, with the kind of glowering.
Yeah, I tried to ask her out.
Good thing she's turned you down.
Yeah.
I'm here now. Well, I love Topstone, that company, history of it, all the masks they made. In 2000, there was a find of the original masters. Not the masks, but the masters used to make the masks. The 3D sculptures from which the molds were made, and from which the masks were made. So today, and for the last 20 years, there have been a lot of modern, shall we say, reproductions of the Topstone masks, but they're thick and they're artistically painted, whereas the original ones were very thin and just hastily painted in a factory. So you can tell the modern ones from the old ones very easily. But those modern ones helped reignite an interest in the hobby. In the topic of Topstone, I was already interested in it, but other people caught on because of the circulation of these new reproductions. In mask circles, we call them a modern pull. Pull is when you pull the rubber out of the mold. So you have like a vintage pull, and you have a modern pull. So those would be called modern pulls. But in more antiquarian terminology, they're reproductions of originals. And that helped build up a bigger audience for the legend of Topstone. And today there's quite a few people who collect Topstone masks, quite a lot of interest in it. And I'm not shy about saying I have the definitive greatest collection of vintage Keith Ward Topstone masks in the world. I will not be shy about that. I have the world's premier collection of vintage.
That's amazing.
Keith Ward Topstone. There are people who are more into the later, like 80s, 90s Topstones after Keith Ward was no longer involved with the company. I have a fair number of those too, but I'm not as interested in those because they're sort of generic and knockoffs of other companies' masks. They're not the classic Topstones. I'm more interested in the 50s, 60s, 70s classic era Keith Ward Topstones. That's what floats my boat. I also collect the later stuff too, but I specialize in the earlier things. And that's been a collecting focus of mine for the last close to 20 years now. And I forgot why we started talking about Topstone. I guess I was talking about what am I still looking for. That's something I still actively keep an eye out for. I mean, I have so much. There's not a lot. There are a few iconic Topstones I don't have, but there are ones that nobody has. So, and actually quite a few of the ones I have are either the only surviving example or the one of the only 2 or 3 surviving examples. So I have quite a few that are that rare. Rarity doesn't always equal like valued. I mean, could be there's only 2 or 3 people who even care. Some of them are quite valuable.
Now, how do you preserve vintage rubber masks? Like, I do not know.
Well, it's difficult because they do like to rot. All these latex masks are organic. They're organic material, and they rot. Best way to do it is to have them foam filled. And the professional way to foam fill them is with a machine that shoots the foam like a gun. It's like a 2-part foam. And it's used in the packing industry to pack like shipping. Instead of like putting bubble wrap or something, you shoot foam all around.
Oh, okay. Like it turns into like styrene.
Yeah.
Or styrofoam, yeah.
Yeah, but it's a little spongier than styrofoam. It's not like squishy, but it's a little softer than like a styrofoam cooler. It's a little softer than that. But it's a particular kind of foam they use in that industry. That's what's used to foam the mask, and you have to prepare them very carefully and seal the eyes and the nose and the mouth so the foam doesn't get out. And you put them in like a cardboard frame, or I use I don't really foam masks anymore. But when I was doing that, I would take like foam core panel and cut an oval in it and put the mask, like the edge of the mask. I could do like a show and tell, but maybe that's, I don't know. I actually have an example of this, but it's quite a distance away. Let's just imagine a piece of foam core, oval cut in it, and this rubber mask hanging down from the opening, and it's like taped around the edge. And then because I don't have access to that machine, I pour the 2-part foam in there. And then you flip it upside down and it rises. And hopefully it doesn't break apart and ruin. Then you trim it. You put a shaft inside of it. Put a little more foam on it. Trim it again. Make a wooden base. Affix the shaft to the base. And now you have a nice foamed mask. As if someone were wearing it. It's 3-dimensional. And it's preserved. But even if you do that, like I said, the professional way is to have the machine. That machine costs multi-thousands of dollars. It needs to be done in an industrial location with like a open air vent above. I don't have that. There are people who have that set up and they charge money to foam masks. I don't have it set up.
You need to know a guy.
Yes.
Basically, yeah.
But even after you foam it, it can still turn hard. It can turn brown. All foaming will do is make sure it doesn't crumble away, which they will do. They will literally just pieces. The foam will make sure that doesn't happen, but it can still discolor. It can turn hard as an eggshell. It can turn very dark brown, unattractive looking. So it's very difficult to keep them preserved. The older masks, the older Topstones, actually hold up better than the later ones, because as time went on, they became cheaper and cheaper, and they used filler in the rubber, and the 80s, 90s Topstones don't hold up like the early ones, which were made with better quality rubber. So my older Topstones are actually in better shape than my later ones.
Now, I guess all Topstones were probably manufactured in the U.S. at that time.
Yeah, so the early ones were all manufactured in Connecticut. The later manufactured in Taiwan.
Oh, okay. That's what I was wondering.
Sri Lanka. So different countries. The ones that I like the most, the Keith Ward classic era Topstones, were all made in the United States, in Connecticut.
That's what I kind of figured. It's really interesting. Like in our lifetimes, I remember my sister's friend used to bring me toys from the factory that assembled them. Like she assembled Star Wars toys for a living. And, that's just gone now. We don't have that here anymore.
So they were assembling Star Wars toys in Canada?
Yeah. Yeah, like you'd just get parts, and there was a company that would assemble all the parts and put it in the box with the stickers and everything like that.
I've heard stories about Topstone that in Connecticut, that employees would come to the back door of the factory, and kids would gather there, expecting the people to come out, and they would throw out like reject masks. There's something wrong with it, and then all the kids would get a mask, and they'd go out in the neighborhoods. There were a lot of Topstones in the neighborhood, and once there was a flood, and after the waters receded, there were masks in the trees around the factory because it flooded, and the masks somehow they got into the branches and everything, and you could see masks hanging off.
Oh, that's really cool, because it's a local history too. So there's probably some amazing stuff in Connecticut, which I'm sure you've tried to mine.
Well, no, I haven't tried mine. I went to Connecticut, Bethel, Danbury. Those are the areas where Topstone, because the factory changed locations a few times. I toured the interior of the first 3 Topstone factories. I couldn't get into I think there's 4 total. I couldn't get into the last one, but I was able to get into the locations for the first 3 in the company's history. And they're not factories anymore, but one's a residential location now, and the other 2 are still industrial. One was for sale, but anyway, I was able to go in there and look around and just have that experience of this is where it happened. And I talked to people who used to work for the company, and a few of them had some, like a mask or whatever, but nothing spectacular. It wasn't like you'd go there and then you just find all these rare masks lying around. Maybe if you lived there and like every weekend you went hunting. But now I have heard of some really good finds in Connecticut. Obviously, those Masters I told you about, that was in Connecticut.
Right.
Connecticut. So that's the place to be if you're going to be there for an extended period of time. If you lived there, yeah, I think you could find some stuff. But I was there for a week, and I interviewed people, and I visited the locations, and I looked at some government records to try, like tax records and stuff, trying to see what the history, learn a little bit about dates and things, when things happened with the company. And I did find a few, nothing that I took home, but I found people who did have some heirlooms. People who used to work for the company, and maybe in their basement they had 1 or 2 masks, but they were all always rotting or dried up. No, like an heirloom, like one of these in perfect condition. So the original Keith Ward Shock Monster, original production example, that's a multi-$1,000 mask. That's probably the most, sought after one. They're not. I think people hear about Topstone, they think anything made by Topstone is worth money. No, most of them are worth virtually nothing. but there are some that are kind of legendary, and that's the Shock Monster, a Keith Ward original classic era Shock Monster, is the most sought after of all the Topstones. They made a black hair, blue hair, and white haired versions that I know about with the original sculpt. The only black haired one that I know of in existence is in Kirk Hammett's collection. The only complete blue haired one is in my collection. There's another one that's got the eyes cut out. But the only one that's got, its eyes is in my collection. And I think there's 2 or 3 white-haired ones, including one that I have. And that's all the ones that I know that exist, as far as anybody knows. Maybe someone's secretly got something that they haven't shown, but so I got a blue and a white. I wish I had a black one. Unless I just look at it, I don't think I'll ever find one. It would be nice to have the black and the blue and the white, have them all. So we were talking about grails. That is something I would, if I had the opportunity to get a black-haired Shock Monster, I would make sacrifices to get that. That is important to me. I would get that if I could.
That makes sense. Yeah, I wish I had one as simple as that. Like I said, I would try to make sacrifices probably for a carded Mr. Rock, but I don't like you said earlier, and maybe this just comes with age. You start to realize, like, hey, I'm never going to own that, and there's a piece to it. Like you just sort of like, yeah, that's true. I don't know. It makes you comfortable, and if it happens, it happens. But and that's really, I think, killed my want list, so to speak.
Yeah, well, things I want, like I have childhood memories of the color forms Outer Spaceman. But if I were ever going to get a nice carded set of those, it would have been in the 90s. I did try in the 90s, but I just never could do it. And I'm sort of at peace with the idea I'm never going to own those. I have memories of having Astronautilus. I had Astronautilus and Alpha 7 and Zodiac as a kid. And I saw the little Space Marauders, but I don't think I actually owned them. I think I just saw them at the store. But I owned Zodiac, Alpha 7, and Astronautilus. And I really loved my Astronautilus. He was my buddy for a while. And I ate him. I mean,
Oh, is he? Yeah. Oh, yeah. I get that. I did that to a big gym arm once.
So I loved him to death. So I really wish I had a carded, if nothing else, a carded Astronautilus. But what are those going for now? Like $4,000 or something? Or
yeah, like that. Those are when I started collecting in my teen years. Those were out of my price range. Like I thought, like I have a connection to them in that I saw the puzzle and set, and when I was like 10, and I thought the figures were in there. I didn't understand, and I think it is one of the biggest triggers for why I collect toys is because that set my brain on the how do I find toys that came out before I was born. Anyway, but yeah, they've never been in my price range. As I got older, they just kept getting more and more like crazy expensive.
A fraction of what they are now, but they were still too expensive for me to buy.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I think like a lot of Mego stuff was out of my price range at one point, but then eBay came along and became this sort of equalizer where you would see things that were regionally rare or now they were coming up every 2 weeks. So it was really great, but those did not come in any great number.
I remember Toy Shop magazine. I think I still have all my old issues of Toy Shop. I remember ads where box Mego superheroes were like $15, $25, and I could look at those ads now. In fact, a couple of years ago, I was looking at some old copies and looking at the prices and things like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So no wonder I was able to amass a nice Mego collection because this is how much things were. I don't have Mego. I've sold in the 90s I built up a
Yeah, you had an admirable collection. I believe you said you even had a carded Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was not chump change even back then.
Well, I didn't pay a whole lot for it. In the 90s, there was sort of a cult around the Remco Phantom of the Opera, the one with the hugging and the mask.
Yeah.
And it was, even in the 90s, it was going for 1,000 and up, which was huge in the 90s. Then it kind of went down for a while, and now it's gone back up again. But in the 90s, that was a big deal. That was like the toy everybody wanted. It was like a buzz about that for a little while in the mid 90s. It's just going up and up and up and up and up. And I really wanted one of those, and I could not afford $1,000 for them. I had all the other Remcos in boxes, but I didn't have that one. So my carded Iron Man, believe it or not, I only paid $90 for that.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
The guy wanted 200. He was at a toy show, and nobody bought it. And I came back around like the Sunday at the end of the show, and nobody was still there. Believe it or not. Now, of course, that's unthinkable. But at the time, nobody wanted it for $200. And I said, "Would you take 90?" And he said, "Yeah." And I bought a couple other things.
Wow.
And the reason I got rid of it, unfortunately, I really wanted that Phantom, and it was like going for $1,000 or $1,200. And I said, I'm never going to be able to buy that. But I had the Iron Man, and I traded the Iron Man for the Phantom. And that's still the Remco Phantom I have today. I had another Phantom at one point, but he's gone. So I still have that one I traded for it. Now, of course, the Iron Man is like a $10,000 toy, and the Phantom's still like around 1,000-ish.
Yeah, but it's all, we can't predict. I used to have stacks of Spider-Mans on the card that were like only sold in Canada. They only have like a picture of Spider-Man and the Hulk on the front. Did I keep one? No. Not a single one, because I figured I'll see him again. And that is like a $1,200 piece. So I totally get what you're saying there. With sometimes you can't see past yourself, or you can't predict the future.
That Phantom, I was buying $1,000 toy for $90.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. But I guess what I was trying to say is you can't predict the future, because I would have said to you at that time, good deal. Because that's just crappy, because Mego superheroes on the card were still kind of considered like they hadn't hit their renaissance of, this is an A card or a B card. This was back when they were still in Toys R Us sometimes if you looked hard enough, on the old pin cards.
An Iron Man, I found like Spider-Man or Batman or something at Toys R Us. Or not Toys R Us.
Yeah.
Children's Palace.
Child World? Children's Palace, yeah.
Well, yeah, at that time in the 90s, the boxed Megos were the classic preferred way to collect Megos. Like, that was the A style, the box. If you were like a real Mego collector, you bought them in a box. And then you could also buy them on a card. That was like style B, the preferred package type.
I actually kind of didn't like it when they switched to the cards, for two reasons. One, I just found the selection got a lot more limited. Like when they switched to the cards, all of a sudden I didn't see anybody but Spider-Man and Hulk. And the other thing I didn't like was, the fact that the back of the card showed 10 figures I'd never seen at retail, on each side. So, I was always gravitating towards the box stuff.
In the 90s, I had a near complete boxed Mego superhero collection. For some reason, I never got a Conan. I had loose Conan. I never got. I don't know. He wasn't that rare. He was rare, but not that rare. So I don't know why I didn't have him. What else did I not have? Oh, I don't remember. One of the girls I didn't have. Anyway, but I had a virtually all of them in box. I had removable cowl Batman. I didn't have removable mask Robin. I did have the removable mask Robin. I had multiples on removable cowl Batman boxed. I was like army building them.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think there was like a buzz around removable mask Batman, so I just said, well, I'll just buy lots of them. Because I think you were not supposed to be able to get him or something. You know, it was like so rare. It was like a challenge, so I just started collecting multiple. And they were all different. Each one had like the costume texture, the look of them. Everything was like a little different. I liked looking at them all. I never got the Robin with the removable mask. I never got a Conan carded or boxed. But and I never got the Teen Titans because I didn't really like them. But I think those are the only ones. I had everything else. And sometimes I would take all my Megos and lay them out on my bed, side by side. I would like stand up on a chair or something and like look at my collection.
Yeah.
Like, all laid out. Like
Ta-da!
get his gold or something.
Yeah, I did that once too. I remember I had gone out to a guy's place and bought like all of his stuff. He was a collector. He was one of those gateway mentor types. And I remember coming home and I put all the Mego Star Treks I had and then all the carded apes I had all across my bedroom floor. And I really wish I had a picture of that because it was kind of cool.
At one point, I had over 20 carded Azrak monsters, all different.
Really?
Yeah. Now I've been for a while I was really into like this hoarding level, just over the top. So, but yeah, I'm cured of that. I never one time I never would have thought I would have sold those Azrak Hamway carded monsters. That was like the centerpiece of my collection, but I did sell kept one each of what we would call the colored bodies. I kept one each of those on a card, and I kept my wide waist creature on a card, and I kept a hard head Frankenstein on a card. And that's
oh wow,
yeah. So I had you know what I had. I had
yeah, no, it was yeah, vast.
And so but
yeah,
I was offered money I couldn't refuse for some of those. Like I made a sale that did not include a creature. That was no, it was a 5-digit sale. And there was no creature involved with that. So it was just it got to the point where I couldn't afford to keep them. They priced them. I think this is Andy says this. They priced themselves out of my collection. I just got to the point. I can't say no to this. I'm not rich enough to turn down this kind of money. So
yeah,
I do miss sometimes.
Yeah, I get that. I've had a few offers where it's like, oh my God, like I have to go talk to my wife, you know, make sure she's okay with me not taking this, you know.
I'm used to not owning them anymore. But.
Yeah. Well, you still kept some really cool stuff. That like I would love a set of colored body ones. I think those are probably the most fun of the line. I don't know how to like. Everyone's got, I guess, their favorite AHI monsters, and I like those, and I like the ones with the swivel wrists. Those are probably my two favorites.
Yeah, I guess I mean, obviously, I like the color body ones. I kept those, but I like the hard head ones.
Well, yeah, the hard head ones have such a beautiful likeness about them.
They're the most serious looking ones.
Yeah. Those. I think I bought the squinting one off of you, and that's like one of my gems of my collection. I love that piece.
Collection.
Yeah. he's staying put. I can't even get into AHIs anymore. Like I look at I in a foolish moment sold my sling arm mummy. I thought I had two. It turns out I do not. And I think I sold it way too cheap because I really wasn't paying attention. I just wanted the money and to fund the magazine, ironically, which was about AHI monsters. And I tried to like look for one the other day, and it's like, yeah, I can't afford it. You know?
I printed one. He was like, you've seen the picture there. He was like factory fresh carded. I won't say what I got. It was years ago now. It was multi-thousands of dollars. Just
wow. Yeah. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. Well, I know I'll never own. Talk about giving a piece with. I'm at peace. I will never own any of those ever again because I cannot pay for those. I can't buy them.
Yeah, I get. I get it. You can't go back, and that makes sense. But you know, it's part of our journey, and we all have to accept it eventually. I wanted to ask you a little bit about the impetus. Like, when I remember logging on and finding the gallery of monster toys, which was very, very helpful to me, especially in those early days of, you know, figuring out who was what and what was that. What I've found in monster collecting, there's a lot of people who really kind of keep the info on the down low, and I wonder if that was your experience or if it was just a need to share that inspired that whole site.
The Gallery of Monster Toys. So its current incarnation, it went up in 1996.
Yeah.
I sort of kept it updated through 99, and it really hasn't. It's been pretty much abandoned since 99. It's still up there. I pay $50 a month for my websites because I have more than just that, but they're all the same era. I pay $50 a month to keep these 90s era websites just because I feel like they're part of history. I keep getting all kinds of feedback about them, so people must care about them. So I feel like I kind of have a responsibility to keep them online. But it's not cheap. I mean, gosh, what is that? $600 a year? Woo!
Yeah.
Yeah. And I often think, gee, what am I spending this money for? But like you're talking about right now, so I feel like
I'm pretty sure I've checked it this year for something. Like I just needed an answer.
Well, I mean, it's so outdated. Like your site is so much more informative now. But I feel like my Gallery of Monster Toys, it's like an old amusement park where everything is very outdated, but it's kind of quaint just to walk. There's nobody there. It's like a ghost town, but it's quaint just kind of walk around and see what it was like, you know, what was considered cool once upon a time. I made it because I had that documentary that you mentioned, In Love with Toys, which is a shot on video documentary that I made in 1995. And I wanted to promote it. And there was this newfangled thing called the internet. So I said, I better use the internet because isn't that what everybody's doing? So I made a very primitive web page just to sell that video. I don't think I sold any videos. But
Monster Castle Productions, right?
Yes. Yeah. And so that was it. 95. It had a picture of the tape in its case. I had some information. It said, if you want to buy this tape, send XYZ, like a money order or whatever, to Raymond Castile at this address. And then I said, well, you know, no one's going to care about this site just selling a tape. I better put something of value on the site to draw people to the site. So I had a gallery of toys that were in the video. So I had pictures of different toys that you also saw in the video. So like, if you know, look at this gallery of toys. If you like this, there's stuff like that in the video. That was the idea. It was supposed to draw people to the video. And I made a page. It was just really all these lists of toys. You click the link and you see a picture of the toy. And after a year, I realized no one was going to buy that toy video. But this was back when they had web counters, and you would watch your counter and say, "Ooh, 200 people, 300 people." People were visiting it, and I thought, well, maybe there's some value in just the this gallery section. So it was just one page at that point. I got rid of all the non-monster stuff, and I said I'm going to make this into a thing. So I had my documentary, and that was its own thing. The website now is going to be its own thing, and I made just a list of monster toys, and called it the Gallery of Monster Toys. And then it started getting some traction. And then I said, okay, now it looks like people are actually visiting this. It's so primitive. I better pump this up a little, beef it up, make it more interesting. And that's when I had the wings and the different sections. And then over the course of 96, I made it bigger and bigger and kept expanding, like 96, 97, till it got to what you see now. Actually, I've took away. I used to have like a collector showcase with other people's collections, and I had different sections that I don't think are there anymore. I took them down because I wasn't keeping them up. I don't even know if those people are alive anymore. So yeah. I used to also like a new toy review page, and it was a lot of stuff that I took down because I didn't want to. I wasn't keeping it up. But it grew and grew, and over time, and back then, several tens of thousands of people visited it, which doesn't sound like much now, but I think before the web counter just stopped working, it was up and around it doesn't work anymore. The web counter is not attached to anything. It's whatever I don't think you can even see it now. If you do, it's not accurate, whatever it is. But I think it was close to around 100,000 people, which back then was a lot for a website. These are like the early days of the internet. And I thought, well, the video didn't go over too well, but people sure seem to like this website. And I made some other websites over the time. But it all started with just trying to promote the video and then feeling like, I don't know, people aren't really, at that time, didn't seem like they were very interested in the video, but they seem like they're interested in this website. So why don't I put my energy into that and make that into something? And no, there wasn't any information anywhere about those kinds of toys. Like Azrak Hamway or Lincoln or Tomland or any of the Remco, you go online, there was nothing about that at the time when I put that up. So there was something I was interested in. And I had spent the last 5 or 6 years learning about this stuff and collecting the stuff. And so I just wanted to share my knowledge and share my enthusiasm about it. I wasn't really thinking of holding back information, although I definitely experienced that. I still experience that. People hold things close to their chest, and they don't want to. They're very competitive, secretive. I don't know. I guess they think knowledge is power or something. I don't know why, but I still experience people who don't want to talk about what they learned, what they know. And it was like that in the 90s. And I did want to do the opposite of that and actually share information. I guess that was just my personality and my nature. I wanted to, if I was interested in something, I wanted to talk about it and get it out there and see if there were other people who were interested too. And, maybe make friends, make connections. And eventually then I got involved with the Universal Monster Army, which is still around, but once upon a time, forums were a big thing. I know you still have a functioning forum. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the ones that were big once upon a time are not around anymore. Universal Monster Army is around. I'm not involved with it anymore. But I got involved, what year was that? Was it 98, 99? I found out that they were using pictures from my website. So I was angry. So I went to the Universal Monster Army to complain, like, why are you using pictures from my website? And I ended up staying and becoming a moderator or an admin and one of the people who ran the site. But it started with me being upset that they were using my pictures, which nowadays is just, that's such a lost battle that I don't even care.
Yeah, I gave up a million years ago. Pictures of me could float by on Facebook, and I'd be like, yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. Started from another era.
Yeah. That's what I really liked about the Gallery of Monster Toys was it's one of the few times where you could just find succinct information. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I still check it once in a while, just because I can't get something straight, and I'm glad it's still there. And I get that with keeping it alive. Like, for some reason, I pay to have Foreign Mego hosted every month, but it's a site I don't think I've touched in 15 years. But at the time, it meant a lot to me. I didn't know how to design websites, and I didn't know how to use Photoshop, and so it feels kind of like keeping an early sketchbook.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I do think that the Gallery of Monster Toys website, that's a creation of mine, as if it were like a work of art or something I painted or whatever. So in that sense, I let it go. It's like you're making a painting and then destroying it.
Yeah,
People have painted in the attic. It doesn't cost money.
Now, you've basically transgressed from doing a website to doing a web series. And Basement of Horror is, for those that aren't initiated, like they say be yourself on whatever you're supposed to be doing. YouTube, you should be authentic. And I 100% agree with that. But I find you're being extremely true to yourself. Like, I like the idea of not only, first of all, taking your time, which is something I have major struggles with. But the other thing is, you're not only interweaving the toy, but your personal relationship to it. And I don't know how you can, like, I look at your stuff and go, how can this guy monologue for 2 hours? Like, I don't know where you get it, man. But it is such a unique and well done thing that only I think you could really do. And you built up this great following. I've checked it out. It's just, it is so just done out of, I think, the same reasons you did the Monster Toy site, was because people were receptive to it and you enjoyed doing it. And so I really like the show, and I'll put it on even when I don't know what you're talking about. Like you go deep. You go into like pumpkins and.
Well, yeah. So my impression of you're saying people should be authentic on YouTube. My impression of YouTube is that everyone on YouTube is like, and and their thumbnails are all like,
Yeah. There's a guy my wife follows, and he's always going like, and it's like, oh, how do you make that face?
Or reaction videos. I hate that genre. Where
that makes no sense to me.
And their reactions are always like exaggerated, like. So my impression of YouTube is that it's a sea of phoniness. That everyone is very phony, very disingenuous, and have an allergic reaction to a lot of it. And I knew when I did my thing, I wanted to be the antithesis of that. I wanted to not be one of those shows, because it makes my head hurt watching some of that stuff. But it's hard not to watch it because almost everything is like that. So if you're interested in a particular topic, it's hard to get away from that. Now, I think in the toy realm, it's better than a lot of other subjects, because a lot of at least the ones I watch, all the toy people seem like they do sort of have that more laid back persona, which is what I appreciate. But I wanted it to be, and I know there are people who watch it. I get feedback like, this guy is too slow, he's too monotonous, he's
this
too
guy.
Yeah. I had to fast forward. Yeah. Not everyone appreciates this.
I have to fast forward, like, oh my God, you poor dear, are you okay?
Well, I think my I don't know if we're favorites. Someone described my voice as a sustained belch.
I don't agree with him, but it's a pretty good one.
Yeah, sustained belch.
Yeah, I do kind of find it punishing when you do a new video and you've worked 2 days on it. And like I remember one I did for Starsky and Hutch, and I can't remember. For some reason, I couldn't remember Hutch's first name, and I think I called him John. And like to this day, like 9 years later, I will get like, a YouTube comment. It's like, his name is Hutch, or Ken, you moron. And you're just like, thanks.
Yeah, I've been called a moron, but I've been called all kinds of things.
Oh yeah, I've had some sassy comments. I think that's just putting yourself out there in this age. You're gonna get everyone's opinion, whether you ordered it or not.
Just let it bother. I don't even comment on them. I just ignore it. But that's kind of be the show that I would like to watch. And I wouldn't be good at doing the really hyped up, fast paced, boom bam, razzle dazzle kind of show. It wouldn't be good if I tried to do that, because it's not.
It's inauthentic. What I was trying to say is that every good advice I've ever had is just use your own voice. Don't go, hey guys, and don't try. And it's like, yeah, I don't have that in me to give. I can't. I gotta sleep with me, And I think you're coming from the exact same place where you're like, I have to be what I am, and I hope you like it.
I mean, it's almost sort of website chat kind of format.
Yeah. With really, really cool toys.
See, I don't think a lot of them are. I think other people think my toys are cooler than I do. I feel like I don't really have. I have a few nice things, but I sometimes wonder if the stuff I'm showing isn't. I don't know. It's not exciting enough for something. I don't know. I sometimes wonder.
I gotta tell you, I think the Blood Island Jiggler is the one thing that I would go crazy, like I would pay for, like we were talking about grails, and like how many people have one of those?
Well, so we should explain that. And I have not.
Oh yeah.
I have not done a Blood Island show because there's a couple of key pieces I want to have before I do that. And I was actually thinking for your publication that's something I'd like to do in the future, but I want these couple of pieces before I do it.
Yeah, well, I'm on board.
Missing puzzle pieces there, but if I could fall into place, then I would do the episode and I would write something as well. But so Blood Island, there's this series of exploitation drive-in movies from like I guess it started in the early 60s. No, wait, Terror is a Man is
late 60s. Terror is a Man isn't. Yeah, okay, Terror is a Man's 50s. Yeah.
But that was.
I always forget about that.
There was a gap, and then it was like mid 60s to 1970. Beast of Blood is 1970, right?
Yeah, I think it's 70 or 71. Hemisphere Pictures produced these cheapies, and I think Sam Sherman had it perfect. He said, I told them to make a horror film, and they just kept making the same horror film. So these are all kind of like, Blood Island, Mad Doctor of Blood Island, Beast of Blood. They all are kind of like quasi-interconnected, but, well, only two of them really are. And they all star, except for Terror is a Man, they star John Ashley, right? Yeah.
They're all set on Blood Island. That's
right.
And each one has a Mad Doctor.
Yeah.
So, like kind of like the Island of Dr. Moreau, one different spin on that after another over the course of these 4 films. But they're very bloody and exploitive. Terror is a Man is the most mature, serious one. But the other 3 are it's Mad Doctor, Blood Island, No, Brides of Blood, Mad Doctor of Blood Island, Beast of Blood.
Beast of Blood, yeah.
And then there's kind of like satellite movies that are like the Blood Drinkers are not part of the series, but they're sort of.
And then there's the one that Al Adamson and Sam Sherman made to look like one of those called Brain of Blood.
So I mean,
which, somehow looks worse.
If it's part of the series, I'd have to say, okay, Brain of Blood. Okay, it's part of the series. I don't really want it to be part of the series, but.
I have this wonderful soft spot for those thanks to the Elvira show, and honestly, Eddie Romero's direction is hypnotic to me, and I've just always been obsessed with those movies, and but merchandising is almost impossible other than some posters and things like that. So I really respect you trying to chase it all down.
Yeah, as far as three-dimensional things, there's not a lot, but there is an official Jiggler, and a Jiggler is a rubber figure.
Yeah. So that was given away at screenings, I guess.
Right. So that was made to promote the film, and I don't know. I think it premiered in New York, but these got around. I don't think it was just like opening night, one theater. I think it was a little more wide. They were distributed a little more widely than that. But there was a Jiggler of the monster from Mad Doctor of Blood Island. It doesn't really look like him, but it's supposed to be him. And it was a promotional item for the film. And they used to have promotional items. Like I was talking to someone a few days ago about the movie Sasquatch, late 70s. They had a promotional 45 RPM record that you could get at the theater. And I've got that. But there used to be tchotchkes and stuff. You would go to a theater, particularly independent films, because they had to do whatever they could to promote it. You could go and get this stuff. Or even some mainstream stuff like Alien. I remember when I went to see Alien, you could get the program and some other things that were there in the theater.
I remember going to see Dune, and they had to hand me a dictionary at the front door.
I think that's a lost thing. You don't get promo items in the theater for movies anymore, but you used to. And that's what this Jiggler was. It was like a promo for Mad Doctor of Blood Island. And I've got that. It wasn't cheap. I spent years looking for it, asking, and finally I got it. Now, when I got it, I received instant messages from two different people who also had one, because they want to just kind of show that they were like we were in the club, so to speak. Yeah, and they showed me
the reunion.
So there's more than one out there. There's at least.
Well, that's cool. So it's like a Tong Teen, or is it more of like an Illuminati situation?
Oh, I guess it's Illuminati. I don't know.
The Blood Island Illuminati.
Well, there's sort of like that, something like that with. I have a Tomland mummy. I think you do too, right?
Yes.
There's something like that with the Tomlins, but particularly that mummy, because that's the one that, if it's something nobody has, then there can't be a club. There has to be enough to have a club. So there's sort of like I get communication from people who have the Tomlin mummy, like, I got one too. So we're in a club.
What's funny about that is I'm very proud of the Tomlins, even though they're like, not really part of my childhood, but they're so connected to Lincoln that it fills in the gaps. But I showed it to someone. I just remember they're like, what the hell is that? It doesn't, they were like, is that a guy in his pajamas? What's that supposed to be? And it's like, yeah, okay, it's gone so far from the monster concept that it's kind of its own niche. And I'm glad to be part of that niche, but you do kind of go, okay, we've really gone down a path here. This is not Karis,
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's so I think I didn't reduce these things to the dollars and cents, but I think the value of that has gone down a bit. But I did get some offers on mine that I turned down for like $6,000 in that ballpark. And I just like, no, it's not for sale. I think now I think the market's gone down quite a bit for that. It's still a valuable thing, but it's not like that anymore. But that's for anyone. What are they talking about? That's how much demand there could be for this weird little toy. That is like Brian just said. It just looks like a guy in his pajamas. He's got like a white head and just like an off-white jumpsuit, and there's really nothing to it. But that's kind of what makes it cute. That's what makes it special.
Yeah.
It's so rudimentary. It's so.
Well, for me, it's like seeing it boiled down. You have the AHI mummy, then you have the Lincoln, which is a complete, copy of the AHI mummy with some artistic. It's almost like this is the third generation AHI mummy bootleg. I don't know where you'd put the little mini monster figure, but you know what I mean. Like it's this strange kind of de-evolution of the toys almost.
Yeah, when it doesn't even resemble the original anymore. It's just the outline of it. The details.
I'm sorry, that part broke up.
I was saying it's like like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy till you get to the point where all the details are gone. And it's just like an outline, and it doesn't even resemble the original anymore. It's so
exactly.
But that's why it's cute, because it's so simple.
Yeah, I do adore it, and well, that moves mountains when you're collecting.
That piece with never owning any other Tomland monsters. I'm never going to have the Dracula or the Frankenstein or the Wolfman. I'm okay. I'm not, because there's so much awareness now. If one came up, I remember there was a Wolfman for $1,500, and I think a friend of mine got it, and I knew he wanted it, so I kind of stayed out of it. But that was probably my last chance. That was many years ago to ever own another one of those, because now I think that figure would be multiples of that price. So I'm at peace. I don't have any more. Okay, whatever. It's fine.
I won the lottery. I got the set thanks to just searching, and I paid a lot relatively to the time, and I'm very happy I did that. But now it's I'm like, I could sell them, but I really feel when you get lucky, sometimes you feel almost gratitude, like you were supposed to have this. And I don't know. I mean, we all want to be pragmatic about this, but this is an emotional journey. Toy collecting is it's like your primal happiness buttons being pressed. So it's hard to navigate some of these decisions because your heart's going, do it. Yeah.
I feel like if I sold that mummy, that in some way I would be ungrateful, or I'd be I don't know. Who am I being ungrateful toward? I'm not sure, but I just feel like there's some bad karma or something, and letting him go. It's supposed to happen, like you just. So I should.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna hang on to this because it just feels right, and I get that, and I remember being bothered when people wouldn't sell things to me. They'd almost sell it to me, but then they'd go, no, I can't. That would drive me crazy. But now I want to go apologize.
Those people not telling me something. Those couple of Blood Island pieces. That's the case where I know where they are, but people won't sell them. So I'm like, gosh, just
yeah. I always look at those people as like, well, you won't be bidding against me if another one pops up. Because if you are, you're a jerk. But you know what I mean? Like if they've got one, they're out of the running, and I don't have to worry about them. That makes no sense because you can't know everyone gunning for these things. But in my little kid logic, that works.
Well, I've had situations where people, something I wanted, very rare, someone else already had it, and I thought, well, okay, I don't have to worry about them. Goodbye. Second or third one. And sometimes I think it gets personal. Some collectors, they want to make sure other people don't have it.
Yeah, I've experienced that collector before, and I don't understand that. I'm one of those guys like, well, I got mine, and good luck, everybody. But yeah, I've seen that where somebody like hoards one piece, and you're just like, what are you doing? But I mean, it's a free country.
I don't even feel the need to upgrade very much unless it's really bad condition. Like you said, I've got mine. This is my example of this toy, for better or worse. If it's rough, it's mint, or whatever, this is mine. And this is the one I have in my collection. And I don't really feel like I need to seek out a better one and replace that. I feel like, no, I've got it. This fills that space in my collection. And I'm happy with it. Unless it's just really, really rough, then I might want to upgrade. But otherwise, I'm not like a stickler for vintage toys where it's got to be like a 10 out of 10, like slap it or something. I'm not.
Yeah, it's never bothered me. Well, one thing I will say that I have had happen to me is I will buy something I already own because it's on the Canadian card, or the Canadian card with a price sticker of where I would have got, like those kind of things. And I go, yeah, because also upgrading is basically, if you're smart about it, you can kind of even it out. More or less, you can get that thing for $100. But that's like few and far between for me. I did buy a Superman because it had the Hudson's Bay Mego Superman because it had the Hudson's Bay sticker on it. No, that was the reason I wanted it. And but that's again emotional, very emotional connection to it.
Yeah, I take collecting personally, which probably I shouldn't, but I take a lot of things personally. But it's how can you not be personal about this activity? I mean, if it's not personal, what in the world are you even doing then? I don't understand.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very personal activity.
Yeah, I think it's reflective of something you. I mean, this is your passion. We're in very similar rooms right now where we've got cool stuff on the walls, and this is what we do. So of course it's personal. Absolutely.
It would be almost like psychopathic if you were impersonal and had a huge collection.
Mm.
That just seems weird. Even if you were like business oriented, you were a dealer, there still has to be some emotion. You can't be completely detached from it and have a big collection or even a big inventory.
I think if you were going to do that, you should just go on the stock market, or just do something because you don't give a crap about it. You definitely have to have some love, some trigger, some enjoyment of it. Just like I said, my wife and I just like to go to antique malls. I don't care if I find anything. That's not the point. It's just going out and seeing what we can see and getting snacks on the road, that kind of stuff. It's all just an adventure. So I can't imagine collecting toys and not having any interest in it. It must be dreary.
I'm sure there are people like that out there who got into it by way of something else, and they just think they're like wheeling and dealing, and it's just a money thing. I think there are people like that.
Oh, I've met people like that, but yeah. they tend to jump from thing to thing, and but remember there used to be that guy in all the things that he had a big wad of cash, and he was like, I pay cash. I can't remember his name, but I think he was a big baseball card guy, and I think baseball cards were his passion. But then he tried to get into comics and toys, but you could tell he didn't care, and he never really, I don't think he ever really made a name for himself on that level. I think he just kind of went back into baseball cards where he was like the king. And it's like one of those things where it just didn't kind of translate well. Like you can't do action figures if you don't care about them, or you're not even familiar with the characters or the companies. Like you have to do your homework a little bit. And maybe that's why.
There's another type, as long as we're just bragging, but there's another type that's sort of like the collecting tourist. I've talked to some people about this. Someone who has a lot of money, and they just sort of, like you were saying, skip from one thing to another, but they're not even they hear about collecting, they hear about a particular part of collecting, and they parachute in and spend just whatever it takes to amass the world's greatest collection of something in 6 months or a year. And then they want to write a book or an article or a documentary. They want to be like the expert on it, that something they did about a year ago. And then they sell it all, and they take a loss, and then they're on to the next thing. And it's like a year cycle. Every year there's something else. And people kind of learn to identify those. They have similar behavior patterns. You've heard before. Suddenly they enter a hobby, and like it's like they're all over the place, and they're spending wads of money, and they're showing off this insane collection that just grows and grows every week. Like the collection of a lifetime they amassed in a month or whatever. And then they want to kind of plant their flag in it by doing an article or a book or a video or something, and then they declare victory, and then they sell it all off because they don't, whatever it takes.
Yeah.
And then they're on to the next thing, the next hill to climb and plant their flag. I guess those people are harmless, but they're not.
Yeah, well, I remember a friend of mine who was really into high-end Mego collectors, like Mego toys. He said something to me once, like, every 2 years a whale comes along, and I sell choice pieces of my personal collection, and then I often end up buying it back for about half what I sold it for. And he wasn't saying this to be nasty, but he was just saying, like, he was so in tune with that long game that he just sort of like he just basically said, and he said it's even better when you like the person, because some of these guys are charming and fun, and I've certainly met my my fair share of them, and some of them I really, really liked and still like. And then other guys, it's like, oh, I forgot his name, but they're rarely, they're rarely harmful. They're usually pretty nice people. Just they're kind of on a mission, and they don't have any patience, and that's my antithesis. I love this hunt in the game.
You have to have patience because the type I'm describing has the money. Just buy everything like that. Why spend 20 years if you could just get it in 20 weeks? I guess if that's what floats their boat, that's what gives them satisfaction. But
yeah,
you're not going to, like what we're doing here, I don't think you're going to want to interview them or whatever. They might be nice people, but I think sometimes I don't want to go there, but they're they're not going to be like the expert in a field, no matter how much knowledge they amass, because I think the community kind of knows when someone parachutes in and gets out, and there's a respect that's not there. They might be nice, but
I can remember in the 90s some people being downright nasty to a guy that he came in and he had a lot of dough and he was buying whole collections and showing them on websites, and it was like I liked him, to be honest with you, but I did understand what would irk somebody who's been collecting for 10 years to watch this guy come in and, hey, all this stuff on your want list, I just got it in today and I don't care about it, but nobody's wrong. He's not doing anything wrong. He's not doing anything bad. He probably overpaid, quite frankly. So, it's not our place to judge these people.
And their knowledge, because those people I encounter them later, they're like asking me, what about this? What about that? They're not taking the journey. They're not building their knowledge in a sort of like a primary source kind of a way. They're getting it quickly from other people. I think we both agree the journey is what this is all about, not the stuff. And so they're missing out on the whole point of the thing. They're getting all the stuff and like, why doesn't this fulfill me? And then it all goes. Well, because you didn't.
Yeah. I can remember one day I got a box. I got 3 packages in on the same day, and they were all things I was looking forward to, and I was disappointed because I wanted them to come like Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So I had, be like, but getting them all together was not as like, I don't know, as exciting. It's weird. So I think it's just the long game personified, where I don't want to buy the whole set at once. That sounds like it wouldn't be as fun as tracking one figure at a time.
You ever get something you want a long time and then it's sort of anticlimactic, not because the thing disappoints you, but just because it's taken so long to get it that it's like, oh, finally, it's about time.
Yeah, I think Grey Gory was the one where I just kind of went, it's just been too long. I mean, I've wanted this since I was 8. I'm 47 now, and it's a big rubber bat. Hooray! And I sold it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even. I think that was almost early lizard brain kind of stuff, though, where you still want it in the back of your mind. You're trained, you want it, and you don't think about it. You just go, buy it now, and then you go, I should have probably had a little dialogue, with myself. Do you need this? Does it fit in your collection?
Unfinished business. So it's like it's an itch you've got to scratch.
Yeah. I know that well. I'm still searching for, old catalogs I haven't seen and that sort of stuff. Like I'm still waiting for the next thing I haven't seen. How about you? Are you still searching for any discoveries, things you hope exist?
Like things I don't even know exist. Well, there are Topstone Masks that people wonder about. Okay, this is one of those slow motion moments we were talking about. Hold on here.
Oh yeah, right. I'll just do this so I know when to cut. Okay.
I don't like going. Okay. All right. Where was it? Ah, yes. Well, here's an example. There was a friend of mine who recently got a mask that had been advertised in Famous Monsters, and everyone thought, because it was an illustration in the ads, and everyone thought it was that the illustration corresponded to a different mask. And so it was a revelation to find, no, finally the real mask has surfaced and it looks just like the illustration. All these years we were thinking it was some other thing. No, it was this mask, and it was really cool. And he was showing off online, and I was happy for him. Everyone was happy, I think, that actually for him, because we finally know that this mask exists. We were thinking that the mask depicted in the illustration didn't exist, like it was a stylized illustration, and that the real mask was something much simpler. We were wrong, that the illustration actually looks just like the real mask. So that was a discovery. As far as toys, I still talk to some of my friends about the Tomland monsters. Are there Tomland monsters we don't know about? Because before that, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Mummy, Drag, before those turned up, those were a surprise. Those kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, there was a Frankenstein on eBay years and years ago, loose one. No one knew what it was. And I don't know what else. So that was the first one people were aware of. But like this mummy, when I bought my mummy, almost no one knew what it was. I knew what it was, but almost no one else did. So those were a discovery. And people still wonder, well, look at the mini monsters. There are characters represented in those mini monsters that are not represented in the 8-inch size, like the Hunchback or the Phantom or the Skeleton. Now,
there's like a Spider-Man type character in there too, yeah.
So are there 8-inch versions of those?
I hope so.
Yeah.
And I'm at that point where I don't need to own them. I just want to see them.
Yeah. glow versions of those monsters, like the Frankenstein, Dracula, Wolfman, Mummy.
Yeah,
You'd
that's a
think
good question.
glow and then the glow. And once, it was like late 90s, a friend called me and said, there's this was before anyone knew about those glow monsters. You know, all anyone knew about with Tomland was the original famous monsters of legend, the regular Cyclops, Fly, Morlock, you know, Yeti, and the Star Raiders. No one knew about anything else. So my friend called me, you had to talk to this dealer. He says he has a Tomland famous monsters of legend Sasquatch, not a Yeti, a Sasquatch. You have to call him. Or I have to give him to call you. So, okay, I'll talk to him. I'm sure he just has the Yeti, just doesn't know what he's got. So I talked to the guy. This was back in I think it was pre-internet. So it's like maybe mid-90s. And he said, I just sold it to a Japanese collector, which was sort of like a cliche back then, that all the rare stuff went to the fabled Japanese collector.
Yeah, this is the guy with a vault.
So he said, but here's what he said. He was in like a store that sold closeout stuff. And hanging on a peg hook was this famous monsters of legend Sasquatch. And he described it. I don't know all the Star Raiders' names off the top of my head, but it was that Chewbacca looking one.
Yeah, Flash.
Yeah, so it was that figure. But it was on a famous Monsters of Legend card, and it said Sasquatch, and it had Bigfoot coming out of the bushes, like bushes parting and Bigfoot coming up like through the bushes. But it was that Flash figure. I don't remember if he said it was glow or non-glow. I don't think he differentiated that, so it didn't even come up. And he said he had it, and he only had it a few days, and he immediately knew this was something special. So he talked to his customer in Japan, and pays a lot of money for stuff, and he sold it right straight to him. Okay, was that all a complete lie? I didn't know this guy. He didn't try to sell me anything else. So what was that? Was it just make believe, or did that thing exist?
Yeah, that's the kind of thing will haunt you. And it's very possible that they sold that briefly. We've never seen a carded Frankenstein. We've never seen a carded Sonic Man. Who knows? And yeah, it's not impossible. That's for darn sure. And it's not like anyone from Tomland is coming up to tell anybody, is it? Like
that's one of the problems researching Topstones. That it's that same situation. It's not like if you're researching Mego or whatever, or like a mask like Don Post, those people are still alive or enough alive, and they're really receptive to fans. Some of these other companies that we like, these more obscure ones, either dead or if they're alive, it's just a way to make money. They don't really care about it. They don't want to talk about it. They're not companies that speak English. There's all these issues for these lesser known companies with these more obscure things. It's really hard to research it and talk to these people because either not available, don't want to talk, or they're not even alive anymore.
Yeah.
One thing, like you were talking about, it's a little more mainstream, was there in the 90s again, there was talk about a third version of the Azrak Hamway creature. That was like a bendy. So it was the same size as the other two, but it was a bendy. It was all rubber with wires. But it wasn't the thin waist one with the plastic torso. It was all rubber. And it wasn't the little bendy. It was bigger. Now, I would just write this off as a fantasy, except I was talking to a collector on the phone. That's what you did back in the 90s. You talked on the phone. Who said that there was a Chicago show. I guess it must have been Kane County. And he saw this dealer that had a glass case, had 3 Azrak creatures on a card, wide waist, thin waist, and this third one, which was like a big bendy. And I said, huh? So yeah, he knew the difference. And he said, this was really interesting. This guy had this different version on the card on his table. It wasn't in glass. It was just for display only. He didn't want to sell it. So I just kind of thought, well, he just doesn't know what he saw. He's mistaken. Then I had an internship at a cable production company. So it was like They were doing like local cable, like video production and stuff like that for cable television. It was in college. Was I in college? This is earlier than I thought. This was early 90s. So I had this internship, and there was this young man, like early 20s. He was not exactly he was a collector, but not like a big wheeler dealer. And he had like some superhero stuff on whatever, but he knew what the Azrak Hamway monsters were. He knew what those were. And I don't know how this came about, but I was talking to him one day, and I was telling him, I guess he was talking about things in my collection, or what did I like in my collection. I mentioned the monsters and the creature in particular. He said, oh, I know what you're talking about, that creature, because I actually saw that once. I was at this show in Chicago, and there was this dealer, and he had a glass case, and he had all three of those. And I said, all three? Oh, yeah. He had like the one you're talking about you have, and he had the other one that was like, looks like a girl. And then he had this other one that was like all rubber, and they were on the cards. I said, like all rubber, like the little bendy? No, they were all on the same style card, the three of them. And he had them all on his table in this glass case. And this guy didn't know the other guy. Completely different circles. I didn't prompt him, bring it up or anything. It just came out of the blue. Here's this corroboration of this other story, very specific with all these details. And that's why I think, so what was that? Yeah. So if it was at that show, surely thousands of people saw it. So why isn't there more awareness of it? What is that? Is that just a myth? Are people mistaken? Or
yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, my goodness, maybe he had a sample. Maybe he had some kind of factory thing. Who knows? And maybe it's still sitting, under a layer of dust somewhere. I think that you basically touched on why I log onto the internet every day. I want to see if anything new's happening. We're still making discoveries, and that's what's fun about this is, somebody's going to show up with that Sasquatch in one of our groups, and it's going to be, a race to tag you in it when it happens. So yeah. We've been talking for 2 hours now. I don't know about you, but I probably could use a break. And you're obviously still under the weather. So before we go, I just want to ask you where people can find you, Ray, in case they don't already know.
Well, I hope they don't look up my address and knock on the door. So
please don't do that.
That's not the way to find me. Peek through the window. Hi, Ray.
Yeah.
So if they Google my name, Raymond, Raymond, Castile, Castile, just Google me. You will probably find my YouTube channel, probably Gallery Monster Toys, probably all kinds of stuff. Or if you just say Ray Castile, it'll probably come up. Just Google me, and I think you will find your way to my YouTube channel. And if you want to see Gallery Monster Toys, you can do that. The URL for Gallery Monster Toys, I think it is, I don't remember if there's a the or not. I think it's galleryofmonstertoys.com. If that doesn't work, put a the on top of it. But it's the name of the site.com. In my YouTube channel, it's search Raymond Castile on YouTube and I'll come up.
Yeah. I'll put a link to your channel in the description. But I just wanted to kind of, make sure everybody knows. And please do check out Basement of Horror, folks, if you haven't already. So thanks very much for being in my second episode. What's that?
I was going to say, they could go to the Facebook Basement of Horror Facebook page.
Oh, the Facebook group. You have a Facebook group as well.
Sign up.
Yeah. If you want to talk monster toys, that's where you go. Thanks very much, Ray. I really appreciated this. It's been fun, and I hope you'll come back when I do my second season in 2024.
You have your television show. I'll be on that.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Thanks, everybody.